Brace yourself for this shocking reality. Chicago college students are drowning in educational expenses that could buy them a luxury home in some states. As thousands of eager students flood into Chicago dormitories this academic season, they're walking straight into what many are calling an educational bankruptcy trap. The numbers will make your jaw drop. We're talking about yearly educational expenses ranging from a staggering $22,000 all the way up to an eye-watering $100,000. But here's where it gets controversial. These astronomical figures represent increases of hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars compared to just 12 months ago. A comprehensive investigation by the Chicago Sun-Times has uncovered the brutal financial reality facing students at the 10 most prominent educational institutions in the Chicagoland region. A price surge analysis reveals increases spanning from a seemingly modest sub-1% bump for non-resident students at Northwestern Illinois University to a jaw-dropping 8.7% spike for Illinois residents attending the University of Illinois Chicago when compared to the previous academic year. Now, here's what most people don't realize. The majority of students aren't actually paying these full advertised prices. They're relying heavily on financial assistance programs, scholarships, and various aid packages to make their educational dreams financially viable. However, and this is the part most people miss, even after securing different forms of financial support, countless students and their families still find themselves responsible for tens of thousands of dollars in educational debt. Let's talk numbers that will keep you up at night. The typical borrower in Illinois is carrying approximately $39,000 in student loan obligations and faces annual interest payments hovering around $3,000. That's just the interest, not even touching the principal amount, according to data from the Education Data Initiative and the Student Borrower Protection Center. Meet Margarita Arango, a 21-year-old senior at the University of Illinois Chicago, whose story perfectly illustrates how financial constraints are dictating major life decisions for today's students. For Arango, money isn't just a consideration. It's the primary driving force behind virtually every educational choice she makes. When selecting her undergraduate institution, she admits, it was really just about what's cheapest. Looking ahead to graduate school for public policy studies, she acknowledges that scholarship availability will once again be the deciding factor. My parents told me we don't have enough money to save up for school, and even if we started right now, it wouldn't make a dent, Arango reveals, painting a picture that thousands of families across America can unfortunately relate to. But here's where her situation gets even more frustrating. Despite securing a UIC scholarship that covers tuition, room, and board expenses, Arango still needs to work multiple on-campus positions to handle fees that she estimates have doubled from approximately $2,000 to $4,000 since her freshman year began. These fees are ridiculous. I don't know what some of them mean, Arango expresses with understandable frustration. A lot of it seems really arbitrary. Why am I paying $4 for a student-to-student fee? What does that even mean? This brings us to a critical point that deserves serious consideration. When Illinois students find themselves constantly worried about tuition expenses, textbook costs, and housing fees, this financial stress inevitably pulls their attention away from what should be their primary focus, their education, according to Samer Hassan, who advocates for students through the policy organization Young Invincibles. Hassan shares real examples that highlight the severity of this crisis. He worked with one student who made the daily commute from Indiana to Chicago specifically to take advantage of more affordable housing options. Another student he assisted was finally able to purchase groceries for an entire month because a scholarship covered his textbook expenses, freeing up that money for basic necessities. So many of them are worried because they can't even afford the train costs to get to the university, Hassan explains. Rent is increasing. And then on top of all of that, you have tuition, which is ballooning across the board. Now, let's address what school administrators are saying about this situation. Educational institution representatives maintain they're doing everything within their power to maintain affordability for their student populations while prioritizing funding allocation for student support. We continue to monitor discretionary spending across the university to prioritize those services and resources that directly support students inside and outside the classroom, explains Christian Anderson, a communications representative for Loyola University Chicago. Here's the administrative perspective that might spark some debate. Between inflation pressures and unpredictable government funding support, tuition increases are not only expected but occur annually at numerous educational institutions. However, Hassan argues that schools bear significant responsibility for reducing cost burdens on students, particularly those from historically marginalized communities. Universities, especially private institutions, the ones that arguably have the most funding, have a duty to make sure their most vulnerable members of society, predominantly Black and brown students, have the support and not penalize them because they don't come from high-income backgrounds. Hassan states, and this is where things get really controversial. Let's examine the actual costs for the 2025-26 academic year. Northwestern University stands as one of Chicago's most prestigious educational institutions, and it carries one of the most shocking price tags, not just in the Chicago region, but nationally. Without any financial assistance, undergraduate students face approximately $96,236 annually for comprehensive full-time tuition, housing, dining, textbooks, supplies, transportation, and various mandatory fees. This represents a 1.4% increase from the previous year's cost of roughly $94,878. Interestingly, more than half of Northwestern's student body receives financial aid packages from the university, which distributed $306 million in assistance during the previous academic year, according to University Communications Director Amy Lee. Additional cost reduction initiatives include a textbook lending system, winter clothing donation programs, and an on-campus food assistance pantry. The University of Chicago in Hyde Park competes with Northwestern in both academic excellence and pricing structure. The university's 2025-26 tuition reaches approximately $71,325, representing an increase from the previous year's $67,446. When factoring in housing, dining, mandatory fees, course materials, and projected additional expenses, the university costs around $98,300 annually for full-time undergraduate attendance. This constitutes a 3.5% increase from the previous year's total of roughly $94,970. However, spokesperson Gerald McSwiggan notes that the average need-based grant and scholarship package for first-year students amounts to approximately $67,000. For first-generation college students and families with household incomes below $125,000, the university provides guaranteed free tuition. Additionally, the university covers tuition, fees, housing, and meals for families earning less than $60,000 annually. Loyola University Chicago charges incoming undergraduate students $77,710 for tuition, mandatory fees, and housing with dining during the current academic year. The previous year's attendance cost was approximately $74,000. According to spokesperson Christian Anderson, nearly all Loyola students, an impressive 98%, receive some form of financial assistance, and an emergency financial aid reserve is available for students whose family circumstances change unexpectedly. On average, students pay approximately $47,600 total after financial aid applications. The university is also carefully monitoring potential federal law changes and the possible impacts of suspension or limitations on federal student loan programs. DePaul University charges $46,776 for tuition this year, plus an additional $1,300 in mandatory fees. Housing expenses range from $3,025 to $6,912 per quarter for students residing on campus and purchasing meal plans. In total, DePaul's comprehensive cost reaches $72,174 for tuition, housing, dining, and textbooks. This represents a 4.5% increase from the previous year's total attendance cost of approximately $69,027. After applying scholarships and state and federal aid, out-of-pocket expenses for first-year students average around $23,700, according to a DePaul spokesperson. Columbia College Chicago presents students with a total cost of $61,228 for tuition, fees, and housing, with dining when enrolling. This represents a 6.5% increase from the previous year's attendance cost of roughly $57,500. Approximately 97% of Columbia students receive financial aid or scholarship assistance, some provided directly by the college. Spokesperson Lambrini Loukidis explains. The institution also offers on-campus employment opportunities, federal work-study programs, and connections to paid internship positions for students. The University of Illinois Chicago, like most public educational institutions, bases tuition pricing on student residency status. In-state students pay roughly $11,424 in tuition, while out-of-state students face $27,526 for the 2025-26 academic year. During the previous year, in-state students paid $11,178, while out-of-state students paid $26,724. When adding housing, dining, and mandatory fees, the comprehensive attendance cost reaches approximately $30,900 for in-state students and around $47,000 for out-of-state students. Approximately 70% of undergraduate students receive some form of financial assistance. And more than half of UIC full-time undergraduate students pay less than $3,000 per semester for tuition and fees, according to spokesperson Sherry McGinnis-Gonzalez. For students from families earning less than $75,000 annually, the UIC Aspire program covers all tuition and mandatory fees for first-year and transfer students. A $5,000 housing assistance grant is also available for students living on campus. Future artists attending the School of the Art Institute of Chicago face an overall cost of $82,640 for tuition, housing, dining, supplies, fees, and other expenses during the 2025-26 academic year. Tuition increased 3.2% to $57,240 this year from $55,440 the previous year. Around 90% of students received some form of financial assistance during the previous year, according to spokesperson Rowan Baird. The Illinois Institute of Technology, located in Douglas, carries an estimated cost of approximately $77,624 for tuition, housing, dining, supplies, and mandatory fees before financial aid application. This represents a 2.4% increase from the previous year's attendance cost of $75,738. On average, students receive nearly $26,000 in merit-based scholarships and can qualify for up to $28,000 in need-based assistance. Illinois Tech also provides programs allowing students to complete undergraduate and graduate degrees in as little as 5 years. Accepts transfer credits and advanced placement credits, and encourages alternative methods to access course materials for reducing textbook expenses, spokesperson Petra Kelly explains. Students can also secure on-campus employment and participate in Elevate, a program designed to enhance career readiness and provide professional attire at no cost. Northeastern Illinois University charges in-state students approximately $10,300 in tuition, while out-of-state students pay nearly double at around $20,200 in tuition for the 2025-26 academic year. Housing and mandatory fees bring the total cost for in-state in-state students to roughly $23,550 and out-of-state students to approximately $33,400. Textbooks, supplies, meal plans, and other expenses could add thousands of additional dollars to students' budgets. Chicago State University operates on a credit-hour billing system for undergraduate coursework. For students planning to graduate within 4 years, the average semester load is 15 credits, resulting in average tuition and fees of approximately $14,190 annually for full-time students. Housing and dining costs roughly $11,550. For comprehensive tuition, fees, housing, and dining, the total cost reaches approximately $25,740. During the 2024-25 academic year, Chicago State charged students around $25,060. The university ranks among the most affordable options in the Chicago region, with 91% of degree-seeking undergraduates receiving grant or scholarship assistance from the institution or federal, state, or local government sources. Spokesperson Lauren Finch notes, on average, students received approximately $16,200 toward their educational expenses. But here's the question that's sparking heated debates in education circles. Are these astronomical costs actually justified by the quality of education students receive? Is the current system creating an educational class divide where only wealthy families can afford quality higher education without crippling debt? What do you think? Are universities pricing out the very students who need education most to break cycles of poverty? Should there be federal caps on tuition increases, or would that compromise educational quality? Are we witnessing the collapse of accessible higher education in America? And if so, what's the solution? Share your thoughts. Do you believe these costs are reasonable investments in students' futures? Or are educational institutions exploiting students' dreams for profit? The conversation needs to happen now, before an entire generation is priced out of their potential.